Folks, this is, I used to call my podcast Book Talk with Corbin, but what I've done recently is changed the name to The True American. Sometimes, if you're not really a deep Kentucky historian, you may not know that The True American was actually a newspaper. That was the name of a newspaper. It was a name started by a rather radical abolitionist, a member of the Republican Party. And his name was Cassius Clay. So it's always interesting when people learn about Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Ali said, well, I had to give up my slave name and became Muhammad Ali. You know, it's sort of funny. The slave name he gave up he was named after a radical abolitionist. So little interesting historical point there. So this name of this podcast is The True American, but you can find the interviews, all my interviews. I've interviewed Dexter Pitts and New York Times bestselling author David Horowitz and others. And today, folks, I'm interviewing Sister Miranda Stovall. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. Okay. Miranda Stovall. She's with No Left Turn in Education. And she's going to talk to us about a subject I'd spoken to the president, and she brought it up, and I just found it hard to believe. So she said, well, I tell you what, you need to speak to our resident expert on this topic. So I said, I'm going to schedule your resident expert as soon as possible. And this is the resident expert right here, folks, Miranda Stovall. Now, sis, what's your position with No Left Turn?
I am Kentucky chapter's vice president.
Okay, so this is the Kentucky chapter. And is it connected to a national organization?
Yes, we do have a national organization. There's many state chapters all over the place.
And how did this sort of came about? I mean, what are you guys trying to do?
We're just trying to revive the educational system back to, truly educating children, giving them a fair, sound, solid education that will prepare them for the future when they graduate from high school.
Mm-hmm. So some of the specific objections you have are, I guess some people might call the diversity, inclusiveness, equity type teaching. Is that correct?
Yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And what do you have a problem with that? Is that not helping our young people become better readers and mathematicians?
No, our reading numbers have not changed since they've introduced diversity, equity, inclusion, and I believe they started that in like 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I really just feel like it's not really unifying the students inside the school. It's starting to kind of separate them a little bit. And for kids, they shouldn't be separated or worried about, certain things inside the classroom. They need to be unified, getting along, enjoying being around each other, learning.
Okay. And it would be interesting to see if there are any research papers that show this whole diversity, equity, inclusiveness has actually boosted reading and math scores. I know there's no evidence to indicate it has done so for black students. Bluegrass Institute recently released a study, and they're showing the reading proficiency scores for black students in Jefferson County is absolutely abysmal. As a matter of fact, the person I spoke to at the Bluegrass Institute, and I interviewed him, he's on my website, he actually, he almost used the word criminal. He actually used the word criminal.
Yeah. I would agree.
So that's startling to hear about, but what we're about to talk about in the next few minutes, I find even more startling. And this is why your president put it. Well, no, I take that back. This is my wording. That you guys are trying to remove pornography from some school libraries. Now, am I exaggerating that a little bit and using the word pornography?
No, absolutely not.
And what evidence do you have that this is pornography?
I have a lot of papers from the books. I have looked into, I started with, well, the definition of pornography from dictionaries, of course.
Hmm.
I have read some of these books and what's inside them, and it's very, very graphic. Like for me, as a 36-year-old woman, I'm like, oh, wow.
Okay.
I don't, I wouldn't want any of my children to read that. And I have a 17 and a 19-year-old, now 19-year-old, I guess she's free to read what she wants to, but
Right.
yeah, it's very graphic.
And are some of this graphic material you finding it in even in elementary school libraries?
There's one book that is called It's Perfectly Normal. And I have found that one in, I believe, 2 schools here in JCPS school district. And I do believe, well, it's the ESL Newcomer Academy
Mm.
and McFerrin Preparatory. So there's a big argument that It's Perfectly Normal is educational because it does discuss, the body and different body parts that boys and girls have. But the pictures that they had in there are the part that I'm like, I don't know why it doesn't make it educational to me. It makes it pornographic.
Hmm.
They've got pictures of, a man and a woman in a compromising position.
Mm.
They've got 2 men in there in a compromising position.
Mm.
Um, they teach the kids how to masturbate in there.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's pretty bad.
Well, speaking as a parent who used to have his daughter in the public school system, her sister, however, we pulled her out because she was being exposed to some things, and they weren't really telling us. She was saying things to us, and I would go to the school and say, "Was this accurate?" And they would say yes, and I said, "Well, I don't like that," so I pulled her out. We homeschooled her, but surely, you know, when you say, well, look, this is material we think that parents should have the final say as far as exposing uh, this to
Oh,
young.
absolutely. That is the other part of this too, is when the kids go to a public school library, their parents are not checking or seeing what they're checking out. It's kind of like this private place in their school that they can go and check out books, whatever they want to. There's
Mhm.
no parental permission needed. You know, there's no alert that these books are even in the schools. So
So it seems as if some of these schools really don't respect parental authority.
no, I would say not.
Okay, that's troubling, because I have been in situations where I've overheard people in particular places, and some of these folks, including by the way, social workers, they seem to be on a mission to introduce young people to highly questionable sexual activity and things of that nature, and to keep that hidden from parents. Not
Yeah.
telling the parents what's going on, not involving the parents at all. It's almost as if the parents are the enemy or something, some sort of enemy.
Yeah, I'm seeing that all over the country, honestly. There's stories coming out everywhere of, schools telling their students that, if you can't talk to your mom or your dad, well, come to us and we're here for you, and,
Hmm.
we'll keep your secret. And I just don't think that's the way it should be. I think the parent is the first party that should be involved in a conversation like that.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, not only talking about certain things, but gender identity, and
Yes.
I've heard things about changing their name and
Hmm.
pretending they're animals during the whole school day. I mean, I'm sorry. You need to. That's my prerogative, to
Yes.
deal with that. You know, I teach young people. I have a youth program. It would never occur to me to say to any of my parents, no, you cannot come into one of my workshops or anything I'm teaching your young person. Never
Right.
occur to me.
Yes.
I let them know you can come in any time, announced, unannounced. I've got nothing to hide. I'm not saying anything inappropriate to your child. And if they did come to me something about sex or religion, I'd say, well, you need to speak to your parents about that. Now, if they're asking my personal, and even if they were just asking my personal opinion, I would immediately say, well, I'm not going to tell you my full opinion, but you do need to talk to your parents about it. And I'll tell the parents things as well. I can't imagine how anybody would just seem to have this self-righteous mentality that their opinion or what they think takes precedence over what the parents think, and parents are children's enemy.
I agree. I'm not even a teacher, and when my kids have friends over here, or somebody else's child is coming into my house,
Mm-hmm.
their parents are more than welcome to come in here and check out who I am.
Yes. Amen.
And I've always been the parent advocate, even though I'm not in a school building. I'm just just a mom.
Right. So. But just a mom doing some pretty important work here, and it's unfortunate that you have to do what you do. Now, are these schools, are they actually, once you sort of point out to them, hey, you got these kind of books here in your library, can you at least, can you remove them, if not remove them, sort of restrict access to them? How are they responding?
Well, they're not responding very well. They're not responding as I hoped that they would. I've been following JCPS's, let me see here. I'm sorry. I'll have it back here. Their policy for review of challenged instructional materials. General counsel for JCPS sent me that policy. So I have been following that policy. So far, I've gotten through level 1 with, I believe, 8 of the schools.
Mm-hmm.
And on that level 1, I had the middle schools removed Genderqueer, which is the first book that I started with. Now, if these schools had other books in their libraries, I went ahead and addressed those at that conference as well. So Johnson Traditional Middle removed it, and Mazik Middle School removed it.
Okay.
The rest, and I'm sorry, Moore High School did remove Genderqueer as well.
Okay, all right.
The rest of them have sent me letters letting me know that they've decided to keep the books on the shelves because they feel like they're inclusive to the LGBTQ kids that may be in their school.
That may be there in the school.
Right.
Okay.
And that was one of my questions to them too. Well, how many LGBTQ kids do you have in your school? Do you know that? Like, have you even asked their parents if it's okay?
Yes. And their response was?
I have no response
for
that.
Okay.
No.
All right. Unfortunately, it doesn't surprise me too much.
I did go to the school board meeting Tuesday night, and I read one of these books at the school board meeting, and I was shut down and told that they had to stop me because that was obscene.
Oh, my Lord. You were reading straight from the book?
Yes.
And they said, no, you can't continue. This is obscene.
Yes.
And you're reading from a book that you found, or it's in one of the school libraries.
Yes.
All right, folks, that's it. Case over.
So that made me a little irritated, and I said, well, it's in your libraries, and
right.
Of course it's obscene, and that's exactly my point. So right. Honestly, I was kind of glad that they stopped me because I didn't want to continue to read that out loud.
Wow. Yeah. So other than sort of parents connecting with your organization, do you think it would help if some parents would find out who their Board of Education rep is and contact them? I mean, do you think that would help?
Yes, I think, I've been trying to bring awareness to the situation, to let parents know what's in the libraries. And yes, if parents want to email their school board rep and say, what is this? Why do we have this kind of content in our libraries? That would be amazing.
Okay. Well, tell us how my listeners can contact your organization, get information on your organization.
Yes, so we have Facebook, we have No Left Turn, in Kentucky. No Left Turn in Education Kentucky, sorry.
Okay.
On Facebook.
Yes.
You could reach out to Beanie Gohagan.
Mm-hmm.
You can reach out to me, Miranda Stovall, and we have Kentucky at noleftturn.us.
Okay. All right. Those are, and then if let's say I'm a parent and I'm in this particular neighborhood, I'm like, well, I don't know who my board member is. Would you guys be able to answer that question for me?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Since the board meeting the other night, I've had tons of parents reaching out to me, and I am more than willing to help anybody that needs that information.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to end the conversation here. I really appreciate your time today. And I just want to say to my listeners, please, this you got to get this information out there. Share this podcast interview with as many people as you know. Parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, get it out there. Get it out there. If my father was alive and his granddaughter's in the public school system and he heard your interview, I guarantee you he would have picked up that phone in a heartbeat.
And I think a lot of parents are starting to see that, especially after the board meeting the other night. So it was the drastic step I needed to take to bring awareness, I guess.
Yes. And this is just ridiculous that you have to do something like this. This is just patently absurd. To me, it's a no-brainer. Well,
Right. Right.
It's, hey, parent, if you want your child exposed to porno, that's your business. You go do that in the privacy of your home. That's your business. But we're not going to have it here in the public school system. We're not going to have it here in the government school system supported by taxpayer dollars.
Exactly.
That's just not what we're going to do. Sis, I want to thank you so much for your time today, and hopefully we can do this again sometime. And maybe the next interview would be you saying, hey, all that garbage is out of every and all schools.
That's the goal.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.